Hi everybody, this is Janice Goldschmidt, and I'm ready to talk cookies. Cookies are a big part of the Christmas tradition in many cultures, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a big cookie baker. My son Conrad and I give cookies to just about everybody at Christmas time. And starting on Halloween night, I start baking, and I will bake a different batch of cookies every day for weeks and weeks. I've already baked 25 different kinds of cookies this holiday season, and some Christmases I've made as many as 45 different types of cookies. And so thus I would love to talk to you about cookies, show you some of my favorites, and show you some of the most unusual kinds of cookies out there. I also want to know, what's your favorite cookie? So let's talk cookies. There are so many different kinds of cookies, and they reflect so many different things, including cultural traditions and different types of baking and different types of decorating. So let's start with a little bit of background about cookies, and let's look at some different types of ways we can organize cookies. The word cookie comes from a Dutch word, koekje, which means little cake. And that's kind of what cookies are, although the way we put them together is slightly different. Sometimes the chemical composition, the amount of baking soda and baking powder, will be slightly altered, and we use a little less of this and a little more of that than we would in a real cake. But cookies are a kind of little cake. The cookie that you're looking at is called the Montana Monster Cookie. They're really big, as their name implies, and they're unbelievably delicious because they combined little mini M&Ms, peanut butter, and oatmeal. And I first had them when I was driving across Montana. And I stopped at a roadside stand and had a Montana Monster Cookie, and I was hooked. Well, polls show that Americans typically designate two different cookies as their favorite. And one is the Rice Krispies Bar, and this is typically for younger people. They really like the collection of Rice Krispies cereal with marshmallow and a little bit of butter. Some people add a few other things to it, but I really think of Rice Krispies Bars as something for little kids. And the most popular cookie for the rest of us, other than the preschool set, is the chocolate chip cookie. And in fact, it's so popular that there are many, many, many resources for it, and many different traditions, and even many kinds of chocolate chip cookies. Just this week in the Washington Post, the food section looked at the 14 most popular types of store-bought chocolate chip cookies and asked the question, which one is the best? Do you want to know the answer? Surprisingly, the Chips Ahoy did very, very well in terms of taste, but they decided that the best tasting chocolate chip cookie you could buy was Tate's old-fashioned chocolate chip cookie. Supposedly it's very crisp and wonderful. The one they found that had the worst taste was Entenmann's miniature chocolate chips. What do you think about that? I have to say, and to my surprise, that my favorite chocolate chip cookie is this version. It's a vegan chocolate chip cookie made without eggs. I made it for a friend who was a vegan, and when I tasted it, I couldn't believe how delicious and crispy it was. It's really a fantastic cookie, and then I found it completely by surprise. What's your favorite version of the chocolate chip cookie? Another very popular cookie in the United States that comes up often in polls is the Brownie. Now, the Brownie is closer to a cake. It's a bar, so it's often baked in a cake pan and then cut up. And brownies come in a lot of different formats, but the two very common ones are the fudgy versus the cakey. Sometimes people put frostings on them or put nuts in them, or all sorts of other ingredients can go into a brownie. Lots of people love the crispy edge of the brownie, and there are pans where you can make it so that the whole entire brownie has a crispy edge. It's that serpentine pan you see there. So there's a whole tradition in cooking with brownies as well. What's my favorite brownie? This one, the Palm Beach brownie. It's a fudgy brownie that has this middle, that white middle part. That's a York peppermint patty. You make an entire layer in the middle of the brownie with York patties, and it's a very minty flavored brownie. It's fantastic, unforgettable. Another cookie I have a very strong affection for is the first cookie I ever learned to make. These are called chocolate no-bake cookies, and during my childhood, I'd watch a show called Zoom. It was an after-school show, and they had some simple cooking activities, and they taught you how to go to the stovetop and prepare this little no-bake cookie with oatmeal and chocolate and a little bit of peanut butter. I wasn't allowed to turn the oven on then, but I could cook on the stovetop, so I could go ahead and make cookies completely on my own. And to this day, these are a favorite of mine, and I include them in all my Christmas gifts that include cookies. But there are lots of other kinds of cookies, and I have a lot of ways I categorize them in my head. One category of cookies are drop cookies. And drop cookies get their name because you drop a spoonful or a small cup of batter onto a baking sheet. And then the cookie typically bakes into a sort of a round shape. Some examples of drop cookies are these. The first one is a black and white cookie. That's a really soft, cakey cookie that has half chocolate, half vanilla icing. It's very common in New York City. The middle one is a snickerdoodle, which is a kind of a sugar cookie with a cinnamon topping on it. And the last one is one of my favorites. It's a chocolate sour cream cookie. So very, very moist cookie with a very rich chocolate frosting on top. These are all drop cookies. Another category of cookies are sliced cookies. And they get their name because typically the dough is rolled into kind of a log shape and refrigerated. Then when it's hard, you slice it. So it's perfectly even slices of cookie. And you'll see some examples here. We have a cinnamon roll-up cookie. I've got a poppy seed cookie and a Chinese almond cookie. All of these are perfect examples of cookies that we slice, and they're all yummy. Another category of cookies in my head are bar cookies. Bar cookies are those cookies that you typically will cook or bake in a cake pan and then slice up. And a really good example of that are brownies. Here you see three very popular bar cookies. The top one is a Revel bar. It's basically an oatmeal base with chocolate inserts. You have a lemon bar, a really nice tart cookie, very unusual. And lastly, you have a chocolate chip bar. So basically a chocolate chip cookie in a bar form. So bar cookies are another way to prepare cookies. Another category in my head for cookies are shaped cookies. These are cookies you're either going to cut out or shape them with your hands or do something to give them a certain form. Gingerbread cookies are an example of that. Decorated sugar cookies are an example. And the one at the bottom is one of my favorites. It's a button cookie. It looks just like a button. It has a cappuccino flavor. It's very nice, kind of a different taste to it. Another category of cooking in my mind are those cookies that people expect to receive when they get their Christmas basket from me. People always expect to get sugar cookies with decorations on them. And that's the first picture you see. That's a tradition at Christmas, and people really want to see that. Another one that people really, really look forward to at Christmas are rum balls. That's the middle picture. And yeah, it has a little rum in it, but not much. It just gives it a little bit of a kick. Chocolate and a little bit of rum combined. It's a nice combination. And lastly, the horn cookie on the end is rugula. And that's for my friends who celebrate Hanukkah. They really, really like to see rugula when I pass out my cookies at that time of year. Another category by which I organize cookies in my mind are cookies that have that really strong taste. You love them or you hate them. The cookie on the left is a caraway. It tastes savory, not sweet, and it's really much closer to a biscuit. The cookie on the right is pfeffernuss. It's a cookie that uses pepper. It's a very strong taste. I really don't like it, but I always made it traditionally because my father loved it. He grew up with pfeffernuss, so culturally he just really had an affinity for it. A lot of people don't like it, and I'm one of them. What about you? You think you'd like a pepper-flavored cookie? Another category in my head for cookies is all-star cookies. Cookies you absolutely never forget. One of those, of course, is the whoopie pie, and that's the picture on your left. So that's a very soft chocolate cookie, and between two levels of it is a marshmallow center. It's a childhood favorite, but I gotta admit I love a good whoopie pie myself. On the right, you see the Whopper. The Whopper is a cookie that was made popular in New York City. They sell for $5 a piece. And they're made from very high-end chocolate, and they have just a tiny amount of flour in them. And the consequence is that when you eat it, it kind of melts in your mouth. It's unforgettable. These are both really, really amazing cookies. You remember them for a long, long time. I also have a category in my head for cookies for those that don't have chocolate. I have a handful of friends who can't eat much chocolate for a variety of reasons. So I always have to make some cookies and where I make sure that there's some without any chocolate at all. These are some really good ones. We've already talked about the lemon bars. The one on the top to the left there is a cranberry bar, really nice and tart with coconut and a sweet base. Of course, macaroons are an example of cookies that don't have any chocolate, and of course any kind of ginger snap. That's a very popular cookie at Christmas as well. Another category that I think of when I'm sorting cookies is Cutie Patootie cookies, and these are cookies that look super duper cute. However, they don't always taste that good, so I don't really like to make them, but kids sure love them. Well, Americans sure do love cookies, but so do other countries as well. So I have a category in my head for cookies from overseas, and there's lots of really good ones. You see the pizzelles, the little pinwheels up in the right corner. The Anzac Cookies from New Zealand, that's a coconut flavored cookie. And one of the favorites is that bottom one with the jam in it, which is kolache. My dad grew up with kolache, and so I used to make it for him. I loved the fruit-flavored ones, like the apricot kolache and the plum kolache, but I didn't like the poppy seed kolache because I don't like the little seeds. What about you? And indeed, in Italy, it's a tradition to have a cookie table at weddings. If you've ever gone to an Italian-American wedding, they always have a table out with cookies. It's kind of like the same thing as wedding cake. You take a wedding cookie. It's kind of a nice little tradition to have these little handheld tea cookies. I also have some cookies in my head that I categorize by the quirky ingredients involved in them. The cookie on the top to the left there is one of my favorite cookies right now. It's called a potato chip cookie. We've talked so much about how texture is a big part of what our taste preference is. And this has a really unusual texture to it because of the ridged potato chips you use in it. It's super delicious. The cookie below those they look like chocolate chip cookies, but what makes them unusual is they incorporate hard-boiled eggs. It's kind of quirky, but it does make the cookies super moist. I just don't like to tell people that I'm using hard-boiled eggs because a lot of people have a sensory reaction to that. The other cookies you see in that picture include cookies where you use colored mints, and another cookie that's using a hazelnut spread. Kind of a different. Another cookie that comes into my head when I think about all the different varieties are fortune cookies. And the reason is because I've really never mastered them. I've tried and tried to make them. It's a simple recipe, but there's a real trick to folding them up. I've never quite got it. Do you like a good fortune cookie? And I'm going to end my images of cookies here with the Mile High Bar. It's simply the most popular cookie that I make. People respond to it with such positive things. It's a Midwestern cookie. I learned it when I was growing up in South Dakota. And it's kind of halfway between a cookie and a candy. It's made from chocolate and butterscotch. It's got peanut butter in it. It's got honey roasted peanuts and marshmallows. Sometimes I'll add raisins to it as well. It's a hard cookie, but unbelievably delicious. It's simply the most popular cookie that I make. And there I am. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into cookies as I prepare for the Christmas season. And from me and all of my interns here at the Department of Nutrition Services, I wish you a very happy holidays.